We might be too young to have a spotted cow, but we are both diehard Packers fans.
I could talk about this for hours.
He was my legend. He was my quarterback one. Taysom Hill, forever in my heart.
You have a kind of a reputation of being the young diehard fans. How was that, Dr. Pepper Taysom?
Amazing.
Okay, good. Let's keep it under 25 minutes, all right?
Welcome back to the Underage Packers podcast. This is Joey, and joining me on this fabulous week is a man who faced some trauma this past Sunday because he got to witness the great events of Lambeau Field in person. So Big B, glad to see you are still alive, still doing well, I guess. Welcome to this week's show.
Yes, I am here. I'm alive, barely. Didn't think I'd make it to this point in the week, but here we are.
Yeah, it's certainly been a long week since 3 or 4 days ago when we were sitting on our beds. And I a lot of props to you because I cannot imagine that long walk back to the car after witnessing that. Can I ask you, where did you park just so I can get a sense of how long you had to hold back those tears?
Man, I don't even know. It was a long walk, though. It was a good 15-minute walk, I think.
Oh, man, I cannot imagine the energy walking through that concourse trying to exit because, when it's after a win, it's great. Everybody's screaming, go, Pack, go. Everybody's drunk. It's a great time. And in this case, everybody is still drunk, but nobody is happy except those lonesome Lions fans. So pretty obvious what we'll be talking about today. We'll be talking about the once again failure to step up to the stage by the Green Bay Packers in the most important game of the season. And then we'll be talking about the future of this team. So should be, I wouldn't say a fun one, but it should be an interesting one for sure. First off, I just got a general reflection on this season. Okay. I'm not sure how I will remember this season by. I was thinking, though, in future years, I will think of this game as a playoff game. Like, I might even mistake it sometimes as, like, the wild card round because it had those stakes. And I'm really not sure how I feel about this season. If the Packers were expected to go 8-9, then I'd probably feel a lot different. But the fact that they were expected to be somewhere in the range of 10 to 13 wins, and they were abysmal for that middle stretch of the season, it does not have that same, sweetness that it does for that run that they almost completed. That, for a Detroit Lions fan, it might, this season is probably one of great memory for them. And they have not had many seasons like this. And I'm not even trying to say that to trash talk them to Sean Elliott, but that's just the facts of the situation. Okay. I'm not sure I'll remember this season, and what a lot of people have been using to cope these past few days is the fact that Green Bay would have had to go to San Fran and play them at Levi Stadium, and the Packers probably would have lost that game. But I really, really just wanted Sunday night to be a night of celebration. I wanted to go on Instagram and see the posts from @Packers, from the Packer page, from all these different fan pages, all the personalities that I follow to be celebrating. I wanted that so bad. I wanted to be drudging along at school the next day because I only got 3 hours of sleep and drank 5 Dr. Peppers the night before. I wanted that so badly. I wanted this week to be so much fun, to still have the press conferences going, to still have all this content, to be celebrating this fact that the Packers went from 2% playoff chances to in the playoffs. I wanted to not have to pay my coworker $10 because I made a great bet midway through the season saying the Packers would make the playoffs. But guess what? I had to pay him his $10 yesterday, and it was painful. All right. I do not care what would have happened on this Sunday or any of the Sundays ahead. I mean, the Super Bowl win would have been great, but I just wanted so badly that night of celebration to cap off what would have been an incredible run. Big B, do you share those same feelings as me?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, once all the emotion is out of it, since clearly the emotion is still not out of me yet, I'll just look back and say, wow, we were 4-8. We almost made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hell of a run we went on at the end of the season. And of course, the Lions had to say, haha, screw you. And of course, Jamal Williams had to have one of his best nights of the year, against the Packers, but we won't talk about that quite yet.
Yeah. As you were talking, I'm looking at my background and I see this. Why do I have this Lions logo prominently displayed in my background? It's because it's supposed to be like a remake of the Hail Mary at Ford Field. But like, oh my God, now just looking at that gives me so much putrid feelings. But yeah, I mean, the one thing is that the season was not a 2018 where they only won 6 games and was a dumpster fire from beginning to end. Those 4 games that they won were so much fun. But hey, couldn't close it off. So getting to this actual game, the lackadaisical, just not knowing what they're doing at all, unpreparation from this Packers team is very bewildering. And the fact that this is the 3rd year in a row that it has happened, you can throw 2019 in there if you want to, but I don't count that in there. It's unbelievable. And I said this in the video that I put out on Tuesday morning, but the fact that we are getting personal fouls, just idiotic, stupid personal fouls that cost us 15 yards on a field goal, that cost us a first down in the Lions while the Lions were driving, is ridiculous. In the biggest game of the season, it felt like everybody besides the Green Bay Packers players knew the season was on the line in this game. Like, I guess they just didn't get the memo. Like, you have that, and then you have just bizarre play calling. Play calling you'd expect from a team that had been eliminated from the playoffs like the Lions, but not for a team that is fighting to keep their season alive. I mean, are you kidding me? With a sweep to Allen Goshdan Lazard, your slowest wide receiver, on 4th and 1 at the Lions, right? Your own 30-yard line? What are we doing? And then 3rd down, you get the ball with 4 minutes left, down by 4, and your call on 3rd down is the same one that you lost the season on last year, and then you have awful protection. And guess what? Aaron Rodgers, I can't really blame him for taking that 1% chance completion to Christian Watson, because he has a defender in his face and he can't see that Allen Lazard is going to break that route open. What is that play call? What is that? I mean, I'm not a play calling genius, but this same play, and I'll throw it up here now, that Andy Herman tweeted out, the same play that they've lost the season on the past 2 years. You have 2 guys running verticals, and then Lazard both times has been on a deep crosser over the middle. Last year, the 2 guys on the verticals were Equinemius St. Brown and Devontae Adams. This year, it was Christian Watson and Randall Cobb. Are you kidding me with that? Are you kidding? I am lost for words at some of the play calling decisions in this game. And it just pales in comparison to what the Lions did especially on that 2nd and 17 after a holding call that pushed them way back, could have been a huge game changer, could have been something that kept the Packers alive. But Ben Johnson draws up a genius play. And man, if Chris Barnes just hits the initial wide receiver who has that ball, if he just hits him a second earlier, maybe it messes up the delivery of that. But would have, could have, should have is the story of this game. And it's frustrating. This is really, I've kind of tried to keep my anger down with this for the past few days, but that rant just let it all back out. Big B, anything else you want to scream about that I didn't hit on?
I mean, since you pretty much hit everything on the offensive side, and I agree with damn near everything you said. The I guess decision making by Joe Barry
Yes.
on the defensive side, playing 17 yards off on like 4th and 2 or whatever, is with the game on the line and not pressing Jair Alexander on the intended target who uh, made the catch on that said play is really, really frustrating. It seems like I probably last year too. I'm blanking currently, but seems like every time his job is at stake, he gets the defense to be more aggressive. They play so much better, and then he thinks, "Man, I've done a good job these last couple weeks. My job is safe. So guess what? We're gonna go back to playing 17 yards off on 3rd and 2, and we will have a job next year at least, and hopefully they don't see past my stupid ass playing 17 yards off bullshit."
Yeah. I mean, it is a little bit funny that the dagger for the Detroit Lions on 4th and 2 was a curl route. Whoever could have seen that coming on 4th and short.
I mean, like, what the hell are we doing? Like, it seems like all these short passes, like, there's always like 4 people in the area. Like, cover, go
Yeah.
to him. He's the only receiver in that area. Like, step in front at least.
Yeah.
Try to make an attempt at knocking the ball away. But you stand there like a dipshit until he catches the football, and then the game's over. Like, I don't understand. It's the same. I feel like it's the same shit every single week. But this week, it just pisses me off even more. And I'm just tired of the same garbage every single week. And it seems like every single year at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to say, everything else besides that final drive, really, by Joe Barry's unit was a solid job. Holding one of the top offenses in the league to 20 points is a overall good performance. And just like last year, the offense just did not do enough. And part of that, like they had the opportunities, they had some solid drives, but they just could not produce in the red zone at all. And part of that is Aaron Rodgers just willingly taking sacks that push them back 15 yards. That was what cost them from scoring 6 off of Nixon's big kick return in Miami. And that's what caused them to have 12 points, 4 field goals at the end of this half. The red zone offense, 2020, it was at its mountain peak. 2021, with Hackett still there, it subsided a little bit of fall. And now we are deep in the ditch at red zone offense. And Big P, I'd like to tell you a stat that is probably going to hurt your feelings, but the Detroit Lions are 27th in red zone defense. Teams score on their defense in the red zone 63% of the times touchdowns. It's
Ouch.
It's hard to take in. And they have the players to do it. They have Robert Tonyan. They have Aaron Jones. They have A.J. Dillon. But something's got to change in the red zone department. That's for certain.
Yeah, this year it just seems like we are just allergic to scoring touchdowns against the Lions. Like, I feel like this game and then, what was it, week 9 was literally a carbon copy. Like, it seemed like we were watching the same game.
Yeah.
We just could not punch it in at all, wasting opportunities. I mean, we scored more points, but you got to get touchdowns, especially in a win-or-go-home game, and especially against a Lions team that has proven they can score points and proven they will never give up until the clock hits 0.
Yeah, I mean, the Packers' 2 games against the Lions have been an anomaly for the Lions this season. And most of the games for the Lions, they are going in shootouts with teams. I think the final score of their game with Seattle earlier on in the season was like 41-38. But the Packers just do not match them on offense at all. And you're not going to win virtually a playoff game by consistently taking field goals. Now, there is a lot with this game that reminded me of the 49ers game last year. You have Aaron Rodgers getting the ball back with a few minutes left and, coming up short. But they're also the same vibe was felt throughout this whole entire game. All right. The Packers have solid drive on offense to open things up, but they got to kick a field goal. They have a 16-3 lead at one point, but even then it's like, oh man, they are playing really bad right now. Going into the first half with the lead, I mean, it already wasn't a good sequence of events leading up to halftime because you had Mason Crosby missing a field goal, and then you had the Lions making one, so a difference of 6 points there. But going into halftime, even with that lead, it was like, I do not feel great about this. And then the second half comes along. What was bad in the first half goes to crap in the second. Aaron Jones fumbles it, and it's pretty much all over from there. And that Aaron Jones fumble reminded me a lot of the Mercedes Lewis fumble against San Fran, although that one was quite a bit earlier in the game. But just never really feeling secure in that game. So very disappointing outcomes. And possibly the biggest similarity, as I mentioned, was Aaron Rodgers coming up short. Aaron Rodgers stands, including our friend Harold. Cover your ears if this will hurt your feelings. But Rodgers is he is not a quarterback that anybody should fear to play in the playoffs or in high stakes games, especially in the cold at this point. And I mean, it wasn't a great season for him either, but with the season on the line, he's getting paid $50 million to win the game for this, win the game for his team. And he did not do that at all. He reverts back to his hero ball, reverts back to trying to erase the lead with 2 plays instead of getting in rhythm, taking what it's given to him. He's missing passes. He was inaccurate all night, really. And I know there was a few drops. There was bad protection from the offensive line, but there was also Rodgers throwing the ball at Romeo Doubs' feet, missing a lot of other passes. So Rodgers isn't completely to blame, obviously, but he is the leader of this team. He is what 80% of their cap space money is going towards, and he cannot get it done once again. And we go around this carousel, to use his phrasing, over and over and over and over again. And at this point, I see no way. I mean, I would be I hate when people say this, but I'd love to be proven wrong. But I do not see any world in which next year the Packers win the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. And I'm not saying that I see that world happening with Jordan Love. I'm just saying with Aaron Rodgers, I do not see that happening. And it's hard to let go of that. It is. It is hard to accept the fact that after 2010, when the mindset was we got at least 1 or 2 more Super Bowls coming in this next decade, it's hard to accept all these losses that we've seen over the past 13 years, and that is the truth, that they couldn't figure it out just one of those years, and that each of those losses have their little details that are so excruciating, painful to look back on. And really, it's kind of, I mean, we are spoiled in the fact that we've been in the playoffs over and over again, and we've had this streak of success. But also, it is unbelievable how things have just never bounced their way in one of these big games, that they've just never gotten that lucky, that the luck runs out. And, the playoffs and everything about this league, it is a game of inches. And, if just one of those plays goes different, who knows what we're talking about now. Who knows? I mean, they could be 15-time champions by now. One thing that especially brought this to my mind was seeing the double doink again. And it just reminded me of that whole Bears season and the fact that if Cody Parkey just makes that field goal, and if Packers legend Travion Hester doesn't get his hands on it, the Eagles are eliminated from the playoffs, and the 2018 Bears, who are a really good team, I mean, who knows what happens? And hey, I mean, even who knows what happens if they go play Minnesota in the NFC Championship game at their house? Like, it's just those little plays that, like, it's kind of crazy how the Packers have never had one of those go their way. Okay, back to Aaron Rodgers. It's hard to accept that this is the facts, but it is, and I think we got to move on. I think we have to get off this carousel. You know, when Aaron Rodgers was making that analogy, all in my mind was thinking, I am this kid that is about to throw up and begging to get off this carousel. Take me off. I'm sick of it. Big B, what are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers? Are you ready to puke on this carousel too?
I mean, I'm just gonna go back to what I said last year. I'm just had it with this entire situation, and the will he return, will he not return? So at this point, if he wants to return, great. I'll have him back. He'll be back. Great. Love Aaron Rodgers. Love to get another year with him. But if he moves on and doesn't accept his $40 million he's earning next year, then great. I don't care. Like Jordan Love season. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just waiting to see what happens, and I'll be on that train whenever the decision is made.
Yes, at the end of the day, unlike some fans, mainly we are Packers fans. First thing,
Correct.
we are Packers fans. Everything else is second to that. And with Rodgers, you know, the thought was, like, the main argument that even the two of us were making this whole time was he is not going to retire. He's not going to walk away from all that money. But then listening to his press conference and hearing him say something like, time is energy, and energy is money. I was like, you know what? If anybody is going to walk away from $50 million, it is definitely Aaron Rodgers. That is for sure. I mean, I certainly think his press conference made me think there is more than a 0% chance that he would retire. I still think it's less than likely. You know, what he said to Jameson Williams too, that he didn't want to give his jersey to him. You know, you can take that how you want, but I will give you this piece of advice over these next 2 or 3 months, which is to not pay attention to pretty much any headline you see saying that Aaron Rodgers is leaning towards retirement. Aaron Rodgers is staying with the Packers, and here's why. Because Aaron Rodgers doesn't even know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do next season. Like, you just got to listen to the words that are coming out of his mouth. He is saying that he is going to decide. He is going to wait to see how he feels. It's going to take his time. I don't know if ayahuasca will be involved, but he's going to take his time to mull over his feelings and see how he feels over these next few weeks. Decided if he wants to come back. And hindsight is 2020, but it is interesting to imagine what world we'd be living if the Packers took that risk this in February of 2022 and just traded him. Got a big return, and his trade value is much lower now, not only because he's aged a year, but also because he didn't have another MVP season this past year, which is obviously a very high bar. But his trade value has gone down, and we'll see what happens for sure. But we will be here with all of it. I will never forget that moment before the 2020 draft, seeing that segment on ESPN, Adam Schefter saying that Aaron Rodgers wants to exit Green Bay, and the immediate live stream that me and Big B did following. It's been a long 3 years since then, and here we are again.
Hasn't stopped, unfortunately, either.
No. Now, one thing I did want to bring up, a good thing about Aaron Rodgers was, while listening to his post-game press conference, the most important thing he said was he gave Big B another shout-out inadvertently. So let's roll that clip.
Went through this and fought through this season in totality.
The truth about them, I think, thanks to Make-A-Wish Kid, I did have a fractured thumb, and there were other injuries that weren't as severe as that.
All right. If he needs to be, I understand this is hypothetical. Is Jordan ready to be the starting quarterback for this team?
I don't know if you ever.
Absolutely. There we go. It's funny that Aaron Rodgers has like mentioned us 3 times now and like literally has no idea he knows both of us. But he's great friend of the show, Aaron Rodgers, just regarding the last 10 minutes of what we said. Okay, that's the future of Aaron Rodgers. Now taking a step back, the future of this team. They've got a long way to go. This is probably the least hopeful I've been of this team of the past 3 or 4 years. But that doesn't mean they won't turn around. There's just a lot of mystery to what this team looks like. Matt LaFleur pretty much implied in his press conference that he wants to run it back again, which is yikes to me because a lot of players performed under expectations this year. And I'm not saying they should do a complete reset, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. He also said that he doesn't anticipate any staff moves or firing, so that does include Joe Barry, like it or not. A few coaches that could be added to his staff in some fashion. I don't know what the movement for these coaches would look like. But you'd have Nathaniel Hackett, who LaFleur mentioned possibly bringing back. You do have Justin Auden, who was the Broncos offensive coordinator. He was the Packers tight end coach, and Matt has known Auden all the way back to their time with Dan Quinn, Kyle Shanahan in Atlanta. And then you also have his brother, Mike LaFleur, who got fired by the New York Jets as their offensive coordinator. So, like I said, I don't know what the subsequent moves would look like for those hirings if they were to happen, but certainly would be interesting additions. I, for one, would just like the stories of Matt and his brother hanging out together, because it honestly feels like it goes under mention that he has a brother who is an offensive mind in this league. Like it's not as brought up as I think it should be for some reason, and I don't expect everybody to be like freaking out about it every week, but it's kind of just a forgotten fact in my opinion.
It's probably just one of those things where like only we care about it,
Yeah.
so we expect everybody else to care about it at the same time, but nobody else cares about it. It's probably one of those things, you know.
Yeah, probably true. So some possible hires there. As far as players, I should probably pull up the players that are going to be unrestricted free agents here. So let me do that. Yeah, Randall Cobb, obviously. I don't think he gets brought back, unfortunately. You have Dean Lowry, once again, and Mason Crosby, probably not. But maybe. I think, what he did over this last half of the season makes him a better argument. Alan Lazard, who seemed pretty angry with the team in his closing press conference this Monday, but kind of hard to read his anger as either being directed towards the team or just the situation in general. So we'll see with Allen. If a team is going to offer him something over, I don't know, $8 million a year, I don't see the Packers matching that offer after a disappointing season from him. Robert Tonyan, I definitely see him being brought back. Jaron Reed had a strong last half of the season. I would think, especially since they're probably going to let Dean Lowry walk, they'll probably be Reed back. Big Dog, probably up to him. They've done these one-year contracts over the past 2 years, and if he wants to come back, I'm sure they have no problem with doing that. And then, let's see, anybody else important, unless you really care about Don Leavitt, Eric Wilson, what they'll do with him. Keyshawn Nixon. Oh, okay, here's a list of 3 interesting ones. Keyshawn Nixon, I don't think some team pays him an outrageous amount. I think he would want to stay in Green Bay with Richard Bisaccia. think he'd want that. And then you have Yash Nyman, who is probably the most interesting one out of all of these. I believe this is the first time he is unrestricted free agent opposed to a restricted free agent. So that's a big deal. He has been, thrown around in there as possible trade candidate over these past 2 years whenever he made his name last year. But I mean, he is a really solid depth offensive tackle that is kind of hard to come by. I really like him on the Packers. I think they need him. But hey, if he goes out there and gets paid, applause to Virginia Tech Hokie, Yash Nyman, and we'd gladly thank him for his time. Seriously, a Packers legend. I hope the best for him. And then Adrian Amos, man, really unfortunate season for him. Would have been great if he could have had a strong year to end off his contract. That was not the case, obviously. Honestly, with his down year, I would not be surprised if the Packers and him come to a team-friendly one-year deal where he gets to kind of reset this playing field so he can hopefully get a 2-3 year deal to finish off his career after that comes to an end. So interesting outlook for this team. I will have to report back to you after I do my annual Madden franchise where I play out like the next 5 or 6 years and live in a fantasy world. It's great, really. But Big B, any thoughts on the Packers free agent class there?
Only person I care about is Sean Nixon. If we don't sign him to a 7-year contract extension, I will cry.
Definitely. And one thing I wanted to bring up with Nixon, I'm sure it was all over your Twitter feed, but the NFLPA wanted to do this little silly thing where they were going to take back the narrative from the AP All-Pro team. So like, oh, we're going to do it ourselves, even though nobody is going to care about this list. And I'm probably being too mean to the Players Association because I believe in much more for their, not their rights, but their, what's the even word I'm thinking of? Anyways, I root for the players. I'm in the players' best interest compared to the owners. Love what the PA does in most cases. But the stupid list that they did, and they didn't have Keyshawn Nixon as kick returner, who led the league in kick return yards with only starting as kick returner in the last, 7 games of the season. Led the league in kick return yards, had his kick return for a touchdown. Wasn't enough. They, in fact, went with Cordero Patterson, who had 9 kick returns. 9. Like, what are we doing in NFLPA? You expect people to take this list seriously? And I think it's kind of just what happens with the Pro Bowl a lot with Bobby Wagner, who these past 3 or 4 years, his last 3 or 4 years with the Seahawks before he went to the Rams this year, I feel like everybody just didn't know any other linebacker that was that great. So like, Bobby Wagner, he was good. So I feel like that's kind of what happened with Cordero Patterson here. People were like, oh, Cordero, he's a good guy. I like him. He's probably good at kick returner. But hey, Keyshawn, I don't know if he'll get the AP All-Pro vote either. But he should definitely get the second team at least. Maybe if the guy for the Vikings might get the AP one just because they might like that he was, started the whole season. But either way, Nixon snubbed from the NFLPA list. Other than that, that is going to end this regular season off for the Green Bay Packers and for the Underage Packers podcast. But we will not be going anywhere, folks. I said to Big B after the game ended, like, well, at least we get to make off-season content now, because I love those days in the off-season where I'm feeling bored. I can just make a random video, and it is so much fun. Cannot wait for the draft. We will bore you with mock drafts because they do really, really well on this channel. So I'm excited for it. Make sure you follow us on all the social medias to keep up with all of it. And other than that, Big B, all of a season. Cheers to the Dr. Pepper, mate.
don't have Dr. Pepper, but cheers.
Yeah, staying healthier than me. Thanks everybody for watching. Talk to you later. Go Pack, go.